Hey everyone, today we're going to be doing a quick unboxing and initial thoughts on the Anbernic RG505. It's a Android-based emulation handheld, whatchamacallit. But it's got an OLED screen in it, 5-inch. It's the same one that was used in the first PS Vita, so it's a pretty good screen. And beyond that, yeah, we'll get into it. The model I purchased was the 128GB model, and it's the yellow version. It also comes in gray and turquoise. As well, I bought the 128GB SD card version, which presumably comes with some games installed onto it. Whether it's in the legal variety, who knows. Now, getting into the actual box, we have a console, obviously, with a nice foam covering over the front end there to protect the screen. And then getting into beneath the box there, we also have a nice little surprise, which was a screen protector. Was not expecting this at all, but it's a welcome addition. I always like to run screen protectors on my devices, especially a handheld. Getting into the quick start guide, we have a button function layout as well as the special keys and letting you know what they do, getting into the Anbernic OS and such. And inside the small box we have a USB-A to USB-C cable, which actually has some pretty decent length to it. I'm somewhat questioning the lack of a charger block, but everything seems to be doing that nowadays, and I'm sure you probably have something laying around that can support it. And plus, it only charges at a 5-watt charge, so it's going to be your bog standard iPhone charger that will be charging this, and it's a very slow charge. Removing the plastic cover reveals the 5-inch OLED screen. Now this is the same screen that was used on the first generation PS Vita. It's a very well regarded screen in my opinion, and I remembering that screen playing on that console, yeah, it was a pretty darn good screen from what I can remember. Now applying the pre-pack screen protector here, we can see that I didn't align it perfectly the first time there, but you can see here just a quick little peel up and push over, and there you go. Smooth out any bubbles, and it's as easy as that. If you're ever worried about applying a screen protector, trust me, it's a lot simpler than you might think. And it's a nice glass screen protector as well. It's not a crummy plastic one, and that one is usually more of a pain to apply than a glass screen protector. Moving back over to the device, we have the headphone jack and USB-C input for charging on the top, as well as the L1, L2, and R1 and R2 buttons alongside the left and right side there. Moving over to the right side, we have the Anbernic OS button as well as the back button. And then alongside the bottom, we have our stereo speakers as well as power button and our SD card holder. As well, we can see that yes, we did indeed get an SD card included. Just make sure to have some fingernails before trying to remove your SD cards. This one's a little bit of a pain, but not too bad. But after finally getting it out, we can confirm yes that it is a 128GB SD card. And putting it back in, I presume there's some games on there. Alongside the left side is the volume rocker, and the clicky buttons are actually a very nice addition from just playing with it right now. Moving back over to the front side of the device, we have a standard Nintendo layout and 2 Hall Effect joysticks that are clickable. And they are a very nice addition indeed. Alongside the back, there are 2 rubber grip pads, which actually provide some pretty decent resistance alongside pushing here. So it's nice to grab onto, and it's nice to know that it won't just go sliding off a glass table or something like that. So while we're powering on the device for the first time here, I figured we'd talk a little bit about the tech. So we have a 4.95-inch OLED screen, as mentioned before, and we have a CPU that is a Unisoc Tiger T618 64-bit chip, and it runs at a 2 GHz clock speed and a GPU Mali G52 that runs at 850 MHz. For RAM, we have 4 GB of LPDDR4X, which is pretty decent, a nice little handheld. And for memory, we have 128 GB high-speed eMMC for the memory. And SD cards are either included or not, depending on whether you purchase one. And for Wi-Fi Bluetooth, we have Bluetooth 5.0 and Wi-Fi 5. And for the Android operating system that it comes with, at least in my version, it was Android 12. Now going over to the speakers, we just have a stereo speaker setup, and we'll get into some sound testing as well for that. And there's a built-in front end called Anbernic OS, which is the button on the side that you press, and this will open up your launchers that are pre-installed. And we'll get into that as well, which I don't think is a very good idea. It's a nice thought, but it's not well executed in my opinion. And to my knowledge, I can't rebind that button to open up my preferred launcher. Unless I'm a doorknob, who knows, but... And then going over to the battery, we have a 500 mAh battery, and it takes 2.5 hours to get to a full charge, reportedly, and it reportedly lasts 8 hours. I will do some battery and charging tests as well. And as mentioned, we had the Hall effect joysticks, as well as a 6-axis gyroscope sensor. And there is a over-the-air updating system that's on it. I believe it's a rooted device because I can use rooted apps and they appear to work. After a lengthy load, all you have to do is just tap the screen and then you're immediately brought into the Android launcher. Whatever launcher they're using, it appears to be a relatively stock one, and it seems like some stuff has been cut back, I presume to save on memory and storage space. But going through, you can see that there's a bunch of pre-installed apps, emulators, and things like that. Also, there's the Dolphin MMJR version, version 2, but I did install the MMJR 1 afterwards. Going into the SD card and the files, we can see that yes, that the SD card is there, and that it's nearly full, so I can assume that it's full of very legally obtained games. Alright, then getting into the Android front end here, we can see that there is some pre-installed apps here. So there are the various emulators, N64, DreamCast, PS2, 3DS, Gamecube, Wii, all sorts of things. And then we have some more pre-installed apps here. There's a few that I put on as well just to test. Moonlight streaming was pre-installed, although I have not tested that. And yeah, it's a very bog standard Android system. You can't even swipe up to go to more apps or anything. All your apps are just on your home screen here. Nothing too fancy about it. And then moving over here, we do have a key mapping mode, and we'll get into that. There's a CPU control mode, which puts it into a max clock speed lock of 2 GHz. And then we have just your other kind of standard Android widgets up here, or quick tiles, my apologies. Now you are able to go into the Play Store here. It was updated sometime after launch. I know at launch you weren't able to get the Play Store, although you're not going to be able to get all the apps. So you see here, if you try to get something like Netflix, you can't get that. However, you can get games such as Call of Duty Mobile, which I did have installed, and everybody's favorite, Genshin Impact. Not my favorite, but I know it's a very popular game. And that's the game we're just going to be testing quickly on Android. And so we can see here we're in Genshin Impact, and as I'm sure a lot of people know, or if you don't know, Genshin Impact and Call of Duty Mobile, as well as a bunch of other handheld games, don't use native controller support at all. There's no settings for it, no options, nothing. Even though I can play this game on the computer if I really wanted to, I can't use a controller. Now that's where the key mapping software comes in. So if we swipe down from the top here and hit key mapping, once we bring it back over back into the game, we can see here now that we have a key mapping software. So what this is going to do is assign the physical buttons somewhere on the touchscreen. So you can see here, I already have it pre-configured. Now with this Anbernic one, if you go into Config Manager, you can see that there's defaults, and you can set up your own, say, profiles, but there was also pre-installed profiles. So we had one for Genshin Impact up here, and that's the one I'm using. So if we hit Use, it'll apply, so we can see here, Start Select, Left, L1, R, all that stuff. It's all pre-mapped, so you don't need to worry about, oh, are my games going to work, are they not going to work. One thing to note, though, I did try this on Call of Duty Mobile, and there is a preset for that as well. Now, down here, with that, I couldn't really play it too well, because with the right stick sensitivity, the way it works in that game, it's not really that granular. You can move it and like just a smidge, and then it'll just pan the camera super quick. So making precise shots is actually pretty difficult. So what I ended up having to do to play a match, I had to use my left thumb on the thumbstick and then kind of aim around with my right thumb on the touchscreen. Definitely not ideal. But now getting back into the software, in order to activate this, you have to hit switch at the top here to switch it into the gamepad mode. And now once we exit out of there, the buttons will disappear. And we can see here now we have control with the Genshin Impact. Never mind my terrible ability of playing the game, but you can zoom out there. Okay. And yeah, so this game's going to run at about 30 FPS or so, and we'll get into that. So now with the frame counter software installed, you can see the FPS there on the right hand side, about three-quarters way down the scale there. And then we can see some other stuff like memory usage, battery temperature, CPU usage as well. So you can see Genshin, presumably it would use a lot of CPU and GPU power. Unfortunately, you can't see the CPU, or my apologies, GPU usage. But that's a perfect point too. This is something that happens with Android games on this. It just crashed. And then even if I go into my recent apps here and open it back up, it completely booted me back to the beginning there. I was able to play for a little while last night, but that was pretty short. So we'll try putting it into the CPU high mode, which will lock the CPU clocks at 2 GHz there. And we'll see if that makes a difference. Alright, loaded back into the game now. We are set at a 2 GHz lock on the CPU here. So we'll see if that allows us to play for any longer. We'll see what happens. But given that there has been some crashes kind of this early on, yep, there you go. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, there's your Android gaming in a nutshell right there on this thing. We can try other games like Call of Duty. I was able to get one match in with no issues. So some games you might, but obviously with higher intensity games like Genshin Impact, even though everything's set to low 30 FPS, we're getting crashes. So it's not a good start. Now, the emulator software on this thing, going into the Anbernic OS here with the right hand side. At the right hand side. Okay, now it just doesn't want to work. Okay. Okay. Oh, I think I know why. So with the key mapping, you have to remember when you're done that you have to switch back. And now it works. So just something stupid that you have to remember to do when you are using the key mapping software. Now getting into their Anbernic OS stuff here with the pre-installed totally legal games on here, we can see that we have NES, SMS, which is Sega Master System, PCE, arcade machines, Dream Master Drive, that's what it is, yeah, Mega Drive, Game Boy, Neo Geo, SNES, Sega Saturn, sorry, and PSX, PlayStation 1, N64, more arcade, Game Boy Color, DreamCast, and it goes on. So the only thing about this though is I can't really find a way to add more emulators. So you can't tap this thing up here, You can add more games into your SD card, and it's all pre-pathed out individually. So it says, okay, here's your 3DS folder, here's your whichever folder, and then when you want to load in new games, you have to hold X on the thing for whatever system you want to do, and then it'll say, okay, do I need to scan, confirm, and then it's going to scan looking for new ROMs or whatever you have on there. And then getting back into it, we can see here if we want to go play an NES game, let's go play some Contra. Loads up Retroarch automatically, and here's your touchscreen interface, but as soon as you press a button, it takes over with the controls, and there we go, now we're playing Contra. Now, the buttons themselves actually feel pretty okay. The one thing that I would say is that the shoulder buttons are nice and clicky. The only thing with those, though, is I wish they were stacked and not in line. And stacked would mean that the R2 button would be behind there, L2, same thing behind there. So your fingers would be going like this instead of having to reach across the device. Now, when you're playing just D-pad, like SNES type games or something, it's not too bad, because you can bring it right into the palm of your hands, lock it in there, put your fingers over top, and you can use the midsection of your index fingers to click the L1, and then use your tip of your index to click the L2 or R2. Now, when you're going to play twin stick games, or even with one stick, it kind of makes it a little bit uncomfortable in my opinion. Now, going both sticks, and then needing to hit the shoulder buttons, you kind of gotta like cradle it somehow, and if you put the base of your hand in too far, then your thumbs go in too far, so you gotta kind of bring your bottom of your palm out. I don't know, like I would never be able to play a first-person shooter or anything like that on this, and I don't know, it's just not very well thought out in my opinion in that regard. It would have been better, I think, if they had asymmetrical, so maybe have the stick up here and then the one stick down here still. That would have been a little bit better, I think, although still not that comfortable. But it's going to be subjective. I have smaller sized hands, they're not anything fancy. Like, there you go, there's the device in my hand. So yeah, the ergonomics is going to be completely subjective, I believe. Whether it's comfortable for you, it might not be comfortable for somebody else. If you're mainly playing 2D based games, or you're just using the D-pad and you're not really going to use the analog sticks all that much, you'll probably have a pretty good time with it, because it is quite comfortable when you're just playing classic like SNES or NES type games. Now moving over to SNES, same thing, Retroarch installed or preloaded it, press a button, controls take over. And now we can see here that I've added some games, so if you hold X and confirm, it'll load in some new games, and we'll get into that. Loading the games onto here isn't too bad. Again, all the files are structured in the SD card here. If you don't have an SD card that you bought with the system, then you can use your own, obviously, and it's just a standard layout. Like, it's not any sort of like proprietary stuff on the SD card here that you can't just do yourself on the Anbernic. So getting back into the games here, we can see that I now have the first Dino Crisis on here. And David, you know who you are. You requested Dino Crisis 2, but I'll take it to the grave that the Dino Crisis 1 was 10 times better. But we'll test out 2 for you.
This way of welcoming guests, huh? Not exactly the red carpet treatment.
To get to the emulation controls, you just press select and start, and that brings up the quick little Retroarch menu here. Now, the only thing I don't like about this is it doesn't appear to have every setting here. And then even though you can back out and go through here, there's just, and even on the side here, there's just not, like, unless I'm blind, there isn't a way to increase the display resolution scaling here. Because even if you go into video, like that says scaling here, integer scaling, overscaling, like that's not what we're looking for. Yeah, so I don't know. But if you want to just go into the actual RetroArch here, they do have RetroArch installed. So I would suggest just honestly avoiding the whole Anbernic OS thing entirely. It's a little clunky in my opinion. It's nice for just a quick little get up and go, but it doesn't even have all the emulators in here anyway. So you're going to have to go back into the Android OS to get back to your other emulators. It only gets up to PSP, Nintendo DS. So there is GameCube emulators, and they give you the Dolphin emulator as well as Dolphin MMJR2, which is an Android specific variant, I believe, and it's supposed to run a lot better on Android. Now, in some research, apparently Dolphin MMJR1 does offer better performance on this device. So I went ahead and installed Dolphin MMJR1 as well. But we can see here that we also have our RetroArch, so if you want to go into all the RetroArch stuff here, you can. But yeah, it's quite simple. If you're familiar with Android emulation devices, I'm sure this will probably be a bit of a cakewalk for you. Me personally, having gone into this my first time, this is my first Android-specific dedicated emulation device I've ever had. So I honestly didn't know what to expect. But I expected better, if I'm going to be honest. The clunky kind of launcher manager where you can't add other emulators, it's just no good in my opinion. That is just a waste of a button. And to my knowledge, you can't reprogram that button either. I looked through all the Android settings and I can't find anything to do it. There is a back button here as well, so if you hold that, it'll do the hardware back button. And getting into some Dreamcast games here, it's still running through RetroArch. Through Anbernic OS here. But yeah, we're going to play some Sega Rally 2. And now we can see here within ReDream, which I think is honestly the better choice compared to RetroArch. RetroArch is nice to just get all your stuff up and running, ready to go and do all that. But if you really want to tweak everything, I suggest going into the specific emulators such as ReDream or PPVSP, whichever emulator you're tooling around with. And so you can see here we can change our resolution as well. So we can have 1 times, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, up to 6 times it looks like. So we'll do 2 times resolution and see what that nets us. And you can see here that when you go back through there into the menu, it kind of messes some things up, such as the sound. Because we can see here that yes, I do have my sound turned up, but it's not really doing anything, so yeah. As we can see here, we're running below 60, but let's see if we kick it back down to 1 times, if that'll do us anything. And there we go. And now we're still sitting around 45. Okay. Well, that's Dreamcast emulation there. There is some more games you can play. I do have Panzer Dragoon, which is a very fun game if you've never played that one. Let's get into that one though. And again, navigating everything, you can just do it simply with the D-pad and the face buttons, or you can use the touchscreen for most situations as well. So it's not, you're not locked into using one specific thing. Alright, so apparently I didn't put on Panzer Dragoon, but we'll get into some more emulation. So moving over to Let's go to PS2. Because honestly, I've not really tried this. And here's another one for you, David. Now, getting into this game, admittedly, I've never played it before, so I don't know what speed it's supposed to be running at, but it looks like it's running half speed, to be honest. But we'll skip past this and see what it's like getting into the gameplay here. Well, it's the big show. Alright, so we're ready to get my ass whooped. Let's go. Rowdy Roddy Piper, my fellow Canadian brethren. Yeah, so we're definitely running at half speed here. Yeah, so maybe PS2 emulation isn't its forte. I did try God of War 2 and it was running maybe 3/4 speed. There's not really too many tweaks I could do to get it to do anything else though. So let's see what we can do here. So going into the PSX2 emulator settings, we have the control settings, the actual settings. So we'll go into graphics, we're using native, we're not upscaling or anything like that. And we're using the Vulkan renderer, and yeah, there's nothing that we're using that would signify, yeah, we can turn this off or on to get better performance. So, yeah, PS2 might not be this thing's forte. I mean, at least out of the box. Now, I'm not the biggest person that's up and with it on these Android handheld devices, but if a game's not going to work out of the box with minimal tweaking, then I'm just going to skip it. I'm not going to sit here and I'm going to try to tweak everything. So unfortunately, it looks like PS2 might be out of this device's wheelhouse, unfortunately. Because there's a lot of good PS2 games out there. And now kicking it over to something else, such as... if we can get out of here, sorry. Oh my goodness. So, and the another annoying thing is that you're going from PlayStation to Xbox, and then you're going back to the Android main system, so then you're back to the Nintendo layout. So if you want to switch that around, you can. So you can switch from NS mode or Xbox mode, and now your B button will become A, X will become Y. So if we go down here and we go to exit game, we should be able to hit B. Yep, see, no, it just doesn't. Oh no, okay, there we go. Good, okay, so it did work. Perfect. Okay, so getting into God of War 2, I think I did have a save state on this game as well. We'll see if I did. Yes, I did. Perfect. Okay, so getting into this, we can see here as well that it's running, yeah, half speed, 30 FPS, right? And there was some spots where it was running over 30 FPS. But again, if I have to sit here and tweak with it all the time and hopefully maybe get somewhat acceptable performance, I'm just not going to do it, right? And now, see, when I'm in the Xbox game mode for the controls, now the controls are still switched, so my circle has now become my B button, which it should have been A on the right. So to fix that, we have to go back in, swipe down when it does eventually work. There we go. And click off from Xbox. And now our B now becomes X again. And all is well with the world. Oh, and... okay. So we had a emulator lockup or a whole system lockup. What's going on here? Okay, so there you go. I've had things like this happen before on this device. It will just completely lock up and crash on me. So I've only had this less than a week, and things like this are happening. It's not a good sign. This thing cost me just shy of $300 Canadian dollars. I know that they're about 150, I believe, US dollars. I'll put the corrected price below. But when you're spending any money on a device, you obviously want it to work. Now, PS2 might have been pushing it to the limits, but still, I've had other games just crash the system. Like I was playing a GameCube game that was working, Double Dash or Super Mario Sunshine, works fairly okay. But then the system will just crash as well sometimes on those games. So I don't know what to do in those situations, and it doesn't seem to make a difference if you're running CPU auto or CPU high. It just doesn't seem to make a difference at all. And we can see here that I've got the Xbox Game Pass streaming running, and we're playing Battlefield 2042. Make sure that we've got this up all the way brightness so you can see. And there we go. So I did try Moonlight streaming as well, and Moonlight I could not get to work. I was able to get it connected to my computer, but every time I tried connecting it said the bitrate was too high, that my connection couldn't support it, blah blah blah. I have a pretty high-end router, I have a decent connection of a gigabyte per second download speed, and I believe 20 or 30 megabit upload. But regardless, I've never had issues at all with game streaming inside my house, except for with this device. Now, I'm playing the Xbox Game Pass, which seems to be working fairly well. You can see the input latency is actually fairly decent, I think. Except there's one pretty big issue. I can't use L2 or R2, no matter what I do. So you can see here, L2 should be aiming down sights, R2 should be firing my weapon. Cannot do either of those. L1 and R1 work, but there's no way to remap the buttons. As far as I can tell, there's no controller button software, there's no Anbernic OS type controller config other than the key mapping software that they have. Maybe there's an app that I can download, but I shouldn't have to. It should just work out of the box. I don't know what the issue is. I've not had this issue in other games, whether it's emulators or whatever. I've not had the shoulder buttons not work. So this is interesting. But that kind of just completely rules out Game Pass, and I tried it on various games, and every time the triggers don't work. There's no settings in Game Pass either to change, so Game Pass is a complete write-off. And we can see here with Dolphin MMJR that, yep, we're getting full speed emulation in Mario Kart Double Dash. Controls fairly well, all the buttons work. You can customize all the buttons as well to your heart's content inside the actual emulator settings as well. But they do come typically pre-mapped out of the box, I've found. There's only been one case where I'd had to put the controls in for, I believe, the PlayStation 1 emulator. If you do go to launch them not through the Anbernic OS, do expect to probably have to put in the controls more often as you would, like setting up a brand new kind of Android emulation handheld device. But yeah, you can see that we're getting fairly okay. Like there was a couple stutters there. It's dropping down below 60 here and there, but it's nearly full speed, I would say. And I do have it in the high performance mode. That's why we were locked at 2 gigahertz. And we can see here loading a game like Super Mario Sunshine through Gamecube. This is also through Dolphin MMJR. It is more heavy than Double Dash. We are running not full speed all the time. My wife did play this game for quite a bit as well, and she said in the dark sections where Dark Mario or whatever his name is, you have to chase after him. She said in those sections and in certain boss battles there was pretty severe slowdown. And as well, the control layout for her was not good at all. She found the best possible position to play with this was actually laying down in bed with it on her chest. Now, you can't just go and lay down wherever you are and play this thing, and I agree that it is a little bit better when you have something kind of under to support. But trying to play like a twin stick, even not even a fully twin stick game, but you're still needing to use the right stick here and there to adjust your camera, it's not a really good time. Yeah, so even though I can run Super Mario Sunshine at near full speed, there's going to be some graphical glitches, there's going to be some moments of slowdown, most like with any emulation, but to my knowledge this device can handle pretty well a whole bunch of GameCube games fairly decently. So we're back to running 2x resolution on PSP. This is God of War for the PSP. Ghost of Sparta, I think it is. I can't remember which one. Chains of Olympus. Either way, they're both high-end, harder to emulate games. So yeah, you can see here that, I guess, making sure that you clear all your apps in your memory before starting a newer game, especially a higher-end game like on the PSP. Yeah, you're going to want to restart, or not restart, but close all your background apps. Don't let those run in the background. It will affect performance. And if you are getting drops in performance, clear those out and see if that helps for you. Now, let's see here. This is a little bit heavier of a scene. See if we get, yeah, so we're dropping down to 40, back up to 50, 30s. Okay, so yeah, we're dropping down even to 2 times resolution for PSP. So maybe that was such a bold claim on their part, and now we're back to 60. So yeah, I'm sure with a lot of games you will get 2 times resolution, 60 FPS, full speed, whatever, no problem. But in a heavier, harder to emulate game like this, not so much. You're not going to hit that 60 all the time there. Now, not having enough time to play this game again, because I have played it before. It's a very good game, so please check it out. I know that there are going to be heavier scenes in the future. Sorry, I'm just trying to play at the same time here. So yeah, games like that, they will work. Your FPS may vary. You might want to drop it down to 1 times resolution if you're having drops. But for the most part, your game should run at 2 times resolution, as advertised. Now, to close things off, the device itself is a nice little compact device. Compared to the Nintendo Switch, it is not to be reckoned with. Like, look at that. You can fit this pretty, not inside the screen, but look at that. Like, I don't have the Nintendo Switch Lite for comparison, but you can definitely throw it in your pocket, and I have. You can throw this in your pocket without worry. With the joysticks, they appear to be just about the same height as the buttons. So when you put them in your pocket, they're not going to be bulging out and hopefully moving around too much. They will obviously stick in your pants or whatever and move around, but it shouldn't destroy them, hopefully. They are clickable, so you might hear some clicking if you're walking around, but for the most part, if you have a looser pocket, it will fit no problem. Now, comparing this to the Steam Deck, you can see obviously that, yes, it is a lot smaller than the Steam Deck. So there's no question about that. We all knew that going into it. And they're 2 completely different devices, obviously. This isn't meant to compete with the Steam Deck at all. It's its own device entirely. So to buy this for Android Android, don't do it. The Android stuff seems to be pretty darn clunky in my opinion. I would have liked to see some more software dedicated to just controlling the buttons, not just the key mapping software up here. That would have been nice in my opinion. It would have been nice to be able to remap that button. So I've got Daijishō. I messed that up entirely. But it's a different launcher that you can get on the Play Store. And you can load in all of your emulators that you want, and it's not a matter of, okay, you set it once and forget about it. And yeah, you can keep going in and adding more and more games if you want, and it launches them all just the same, no problem. So I would have liked to have been able to remap this button to launch right into this. There's probably an app on the App Store that I can get or pay for to get access to this button, but again, I shouldn't have to. I should have the choice to be able to remap that how I want. Yeah. Beyond that, though, it's a very nice feeling device. It's very premium feeling. You get that nice 4.95 OLED screen. You get the nice buttons. The D-pad, in my opinion, could be better. It's a rubbery kind of, like compared to the Steam Deck, it just doesn't have that pronounced kind of click to it when you press it in. And it doesn't seem to rebound as much of the same. Like, it doesn't have the same springiness feeling to it, if that makes sense. The sticks, they're very Nintendo Switch-esque. I wouldn't be surprised if they're the same exact layout or whatever, but they are Hall effects, so they shouldn't be prone to any sort of stick drift. They should hopefully be a little bit more reliable, more accurate, whatever. Yeah, well, that'll do it for this one, guys. Let me know what you think about it. Let me know what you want to see in the full review, because I will revisit this after I have more time to tinker with it and set it up exactly how I would set it up for somebody else if I were to go, okay, here you go. This is how it's set up, and here you go. Here's all your games. Because as of right now, like the wife, girlfriend, boyfriend, tech illiterate experience isn't that good. Getting straight thrown into the Android system, if I can get into it, there we go. Getting thrown straight into this can be overwhelming. If you have no idea what any of these apps are, you just go on AliExpress, ooh, game emulation machine, 100 and whatever million games, blah, 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 blah. You get this and you're going, what the heck do I do with this? And then you get the instruction that says, okay, hit this button to access your games. Okay, so here's all my games. But it doesn't tell you, oh, okay, well, you can't access GameCube, you can't access PlayStation. Now, to expect it to do PlayStation 2 or whatever is a bit of an ask, but even to do GameCube, it can do GameCube games. So why isn't the GameCube emulator in here? Because it's not a part of RetroArch, because that's what this is based around, I'm sure. So, again, it's not very intuitive, it's not user-friendly, I would say, and especially this being my first time fiddling around and clunking around with a device like this, it was not pleasant. Like, I've run Android phones my whole life, I've dabbled with iPhones and whatever, but knowing Android and the ins and outs of Android, compared to, say, a dedicated Linux purpose-built emulation machine or something, I've seen better. And I hope there will be better, or is better, in the Android emulation device scene. Because honestly, this is pretty not great in my opinion. Like, you get the really nice screen, you get the fast chip, you get the 4 gigs of DDR4X RAM. But what's it all for if the whole complete package just is subpar? But that'll do it for this one. Let me know what you guys think. Let me know, what you want to see in the full review. And let me know in the comments, are you guys into this sort of stuff? Are you guys into the handheld and Android emulation? Do you guys own anything? Let me know. And yeah, that'll do it for this one. Thanks.